Today's AskReddit post. People who have walked out of a restaurant. What was your reason? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. The menu didn't have any prices listed. It was my birthday, and my friend had insisted on picking up the tab. I knew it was kinda swanky, but I saw her face and knew how I'd feel in the same boat. I just said the place felt a little too stuffy and sterile and asked if we could go somewhere else. We slipped out before the waiter got back and ended up having a great night without embarrassing or possibly bankrupting my friend. Edit. Thanks so much for the kind comments and awards. I'm not sure if my friend's menu had prices or not, and I've never brought it up, but she seemed just as surprised as I was and relieved when I asked to leave. Either way, we're still good friends, which is way better than any meal, no matter how fancy. Good for you for not being a jerk and not taking advantage of your friend's generosity. Party popper. Party popper. Thank you. But I'd hope most people would have done the same. I would. A night out is supposed to be a memorable experience and not for breaking the bank. Finished eating and had already paid the check. This happens to me all the time, right? The audacity of some people. Can't they just dine and dash like normal people? The table next to me had a party of 10 people. An argument started between them and a couple seated next to them. One guy at the table of 10 picked up a knife and stabbed the man at the other table about 5 times. Figured it was time to go. Had it been merely 4 times, you'd either stayed put? Yes. 3 times is too little and 5 times is too much. So 4 times is just right. Okay hand. The number thou shalt count shall be 3. 5 was right out. Went to Denny's for breakfast in the San Antonio, TX area circa 2003. Ordered my food. Waited for about 45 minutes before manager stands in middle of restaurant, apologizes and announces that the entire kitchen staff have quit on the spot and there are no replacement morning cooks. If we wish to still have our meals, it would be at least another hour wait since the manager would have to cook everything himself. About 90% of the customers left. It was an interesting experience. On the one hand, props for honesty. On the other, what the duck did they do to get the entire cook staff to quit? I'm assuming the management wasn't the best. I worked at a restaurant in my younger days and I can attest to how Thai restaurant managers can be. I wasn't about to stick around and ask what happened. I can only assume. It had an open kitchen where you could watch the chef work. She had a runny nose and would wipe the snot with the back of her hand. She did this while she was putting food on the plates. Yikes. Sat there for about half an hour without a server coming to our table, so we got up and left. It wasn't busy. I spent 10 years in the restaurant business. This isn't acceptable. One time we went to a supposedly really high-end, definitely priced that way, steak restaurant. We were seated and the waitress didn't come back for a whole hour. And even then it was only because we had asked more than once where she was. Took another hour for us to actually get our food. And when we did, the steaks were pretty meh, about the quality I would expect from an Outback on a bad night. We complained and they basically just said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Biggest waste of money. I joked while we were trying to find the place that we should stop at the Texas Roadhouse we passed instead, and I wish we had. Why didn't you leave earlier? There's always the thought that they'll surely be there in another couple of minutes. I was with a group of friends and when we walked in, one of them said IDK about this place. It smells like roaches. We all looked at her funny and kind of chuckled because we didn't think she was serious. None of us have ever smelled roaches before. She explained that her family owned a Terminix type business and that smelling roaches was definitely a thing, but we agreed to give it a shot. We were seated, got our drinks and were looking over the menu when a roach appeared on the wall behind me. Without hesitation I told them I couldn't do it. She was right and I would politely wait outside for them to finish their meal. Instead, everyone quickly followed and we found another place to go as a group. And that was the day I learned roaches had a smell. I will never question someone again if they tell me a place smells like roaches. I was so grossed out. We raise roaches for research purposes where I work. They definitely have a smell. Accurate. Dead roaches to me smell like bug spray. Tried eating at the restaurant inside the casino I work at. Sat at the table for 15 minutes with no contact from anyone other than the hostess. Counted 5 wait staff walking around talking. There were 3 other tables occupied. We walked out. Supervisor tried to stop us to apologize. The department head found me the next day to apologize. Was it tough times there? I worked in a casino in Atlantic City in the last 2000s. Just as shit really started going downhill, and the servers were super defensive and territorial about their tables because there were so few guests. Combine that with the already famously friendly South Jersey attitude, and you could almost see the walls on the floor where each person was assigned for the night. Number. Tribal Casino on California. We were actually doing really well. It was a mix of lazy and inexperienced employees. The dept head gave me a gift card. I waited quite a while to redeem it. I was working at one as a marketing manager, which was a fancy way of calling me hostess but with more responsibilities. Everyone knew my manager title was a sham and didn't respect me or listen to me. One shift one of the hostesses called me a bitch in front of customers and staff during our dinner rush because I asked her to stop making TikToks in front of the customers. I had had enough and ended up crying in the walk-in for a few minutes before going back out. The owner sent me home because I was supposed to be the bigger person and handle my feelings inside, not outside. I went home and never went back again. OMG, this is horrible. Good for you, I'd never go back either. Could smell the bathroom from the entrance. I presume. Hope. It was the bathroom. Oh my goodness. This has reminded me of the restaurant bar that my mom and I went into in Dupont Circle in DC. We walked in. Were able to smell the toilets or possibly sewage. It was in the basement of an old building, so a sewage backup is a possibility. And promptly walked out and ended up at a nice Greek place that was completely above ground. Definitely a memorable smell, and I ended up with moussaka and not a toilet scented sandwich. I know exactly the place in DC. I went there for the first and only time very hungover. It was one of the worst several hours of being alive I have experienced. I'm having flashback nausea. Oh wow. I was hoping it was a one-time thing that they fixed. I wonder if they're still in business assaulting the nostrils of who knows how many diners. My other memorable story from eating in Dupont Circle was at Crammer Books in this odd upstairs dining area that overlooks the bookstore. I was there for a book club meetup, and as we're all sitting there talking about the book, a rat runs along a ledge on the wall and then out of sight. Later that same rat, or another rat, ran around on the ledge again. I was only having a beer, but a number of people had ordered food and I felt so bad for them. Guy I went with made a scene. I was embarrassed, paid and left. What did he do? He was an actor, or a set designer. Went out with a group of friends late one night. We had a friend with an eye condition with us, and the waitress asked him what was wrong with his face and if he was stupid. She thought she was funny, but we definitely didn't. OMG, I've had similar to this. I am registered partially sighted and use a white symbol cane. And more recently with the COVID pandemic, I wear a lanyard that says I'm partially sighted. I have trouble judging 2 meters for social distancing as I have no peripheral vision and I'm legally blind in my left eye. This happened last year. Went to a local Italian restaurant which we had been to before a few times, which was good. Waitress asked why I had a cane and was using a magnifier to read the menu, and said I shouldn't be using them. I asked her why she thought so and she said, "You're young. 25 at the time. You don't need them and you look stupid," squinting, and started laughing at me. Got up and left after complaining to the manager, who was trying to get us to stay and was super apologetic. But I wasn't going to take it. I hope she got a disciplinary, as really it's not acceptable. Haven't been back since. Shame, as the food was great. This happened pre-COVID. Made reservations at a decent Chinese restaurant for a table of 12. Our entire ensemble arrived and we noticed the restaurant was jam-packed. The hostess reassured us that we have a table reserved and was shown back outside around the building to a hidden walkway with stairs leading back inside. The stairs were dirt-stained and the room she led us to looked like a covered, illegal gambling space where backroom deals were made. The dim lighting didn't hide the layer of dust coating every surface, while the room itself smelled like stale cigarettes. There were mismatched chairs that had obviously seen better days. We looked at each other and noped out of there quick. You used the word decent in the first act but it never went off. Chekhov's descriptor. Not a restaurant, but one time I was going through the McDonald's drive-thru. It was nighttime and the only person there was this older woman. She was extremely aggressive when ordering and told me to roll up to the second window. I had a brain fart and stopped at the first one. She proceeded to stick her head out the second window and scream with such rage, "I told you the second window." I just drove off. Hate to break it to you, but McDonald's is a restaurant. I worked in the restaurant industry for almost a decade. There are multiple industry publications and in all of them, McDonald's referred to its locations as stores. I mean, a restaurant is literally a business establishment where meals or refreshments may be purchased. Food stands also fall under that definition. I ordered food from a restaurant. They did not serve me any food. I was given a check for the food. I walked out and decided not to pay for food I never ate. Orator? LOL. 2 instances. My boyfriend and I were sitting at the bar at a cocktail bar. We'd had a few drinks and wanted to head out. The bartender had wandered off somewhere, so we waited for her to come back and waited and waited and waited. It was busy, but the place was tiny and she was nowhere to be seen. Not was any other staff. An hour later, we'd just left. The second time, we went for breakfast at the hotel restaurant when we were visiting Miami. We ordered our food and drinks, got the drinks, and then, as in the previous story, we waited. Then the server started yelling at the lady bussing tables in the patio and demanding she start taking orders because they were super busy. There were 2 other tables. One was waiting for their bill. She came inside, ranting about how she doesn't know how to use a till, and how everyone else was useless. Someone from the group waiting for their bill came in to ask for it, and she went off on them about how she was too busy and would get to them when she had time again. There were only 2 full tables and us. At this point, we'd been there for over an hour, listening to this woman scream at everyone around her for half of it. So we got up and left. We ended up going for a drive and finding a fantastic little Cuban hole in the wall. Sounds like the Cuban had a great time. I sat down and got a menu at a Coney Island restaurant near me and I was blown away at how expensive everything was. I had not yet ordered or anything, so I quietly got up and left. Went in with family, sat there for 15 minutes before a server came to us. Got waters finally delivered after another 10 minutes. Packed it up and went somewhere else. Was it busy and how large was your party? 4 of us and no, maybe another 6 tables in a pretty decent chain resto. I thought my friend paid. He thought I paid. We both walked out unmolested. Jumped into a taxi to the airport and left the country. Didn't realize anything was wrong until we were chatting at baggage claim at our destination. It was a tiny hole in the wall restaurant somewhere in Kowloon. We tried to find the phone number to call and apologize, but we were never able to. This was 20 years ago and I still feel guilty about it. I walked into a relatively nice steak restaurant. We sat down, looked at the prices on the menu, then stood up and walked out. I will say sometimes they give you your money's worth when you go to super expensive steak restaurants, but just as often I sit and think I could have had a much better experience with a much tastier steak and less time and for a fourth the price if I made this myself. IDK, I just bought 2 steaks for $40 and haven't gotten any jalapeno butter, rolls, potatoes and all that goes with it. Plus there's a 10% chance I duck it up. Then I gotta clean the grill, wash the dishes, throw away the trash, wipe the counters, and put away any leftovers. Unless those are USDA prime or dry aged, you're overpaying, and you can easily spend well over $80 per person at a decently nice steakhouse if sides are included. My sister and I had a coupon for 2 free meals. This nice restaurant in town wasn't crazy fancy, but easily $20 plus per plate. Anyway, we were excited until we walked in and the smell was horrible, like raw sewage horrible. The smell was comparable to that of a public park bathroom in the summertime with no air conditioning. The kind that you don't actually use. But when you walk within 100 feet of them you get that god awful smell. We walked in and walked right TF back out. The only Hispanic family in a restaurant full of white people. They had us sit in a secluded corner. After like 45 minutes they still didn't acknowledge us to take our order. It wasn't a call them to ask thing either because they seated and immediately took other people's orders. We walked out and they didn't even ask why. I'm not one to cry racism after every little thing, but I couldn't help noticing the difference in treatment between us and everyone else. Hey, I do not like how some commenters are dismissing your experience here. It sounds pretty clearly like racism to me. Sorry that happened to you. They took too long to take my order. If no one talks to me for 15-20 minutes after I sit, I assume things are messed up. 15-20 minutes. I'll only give 5 to 10 minute maximum, right? Even if they come up just to say I see you and will be right back. Need to do this other thing first. I'll be much more patient than no interaction whatsoever. We were young and careless. We had no regard for food safety and hit up a sushi buffet that was like $15 per person, all you can eat. I mean, that alone should be a warning. Salmonella who? Anyhow, it was literally sliced up hot dogs rolled in rice. All of it. Cut in different ways for different alleged roles. We laughed hysterically and figured it was for best and just left. Yo, I'd be down still TBH like hot dogs? Just grab some barbecue sauce and that'd be the best $15 ever. Really? I got some hot dogs to sell you. Someone was talking about sex very explicitly next to me and my wife in front of my children. When I asked the server if we could move, the server responded with a no even though there were other open tables. So we left. A twist. People who should have left a restaurant but didn't. I was working at a supposedly fine dining restaurant in an historic building that was also a bed and breakfast. The kitchen was in the basement of the building along with a pub and bar. This building was not being kept up and there were major vermin issues. A couple comes in to have dinner in the pub. The waitress hands them their menus and 2 roaches run out of the menu, and yet the couple still stayed and ordered dinner. We also had a horrific smell that went on for several days until the handyman discovered a dead and decomposing rat behind one of the kegs under the bar. Fun times. More like fur times. Went into what looked like a perfectly normal restaurant and opened the menu. Everything was much more expensive than I would have expected. $49 hamburger. Waitress said it's so good. Trust me, it's worth it. I told her I'd take her word for it and left. Scam restaurant, money laundering front, tourist trap. There's only one time I have ever done this. I went into a restaurant with my husband and kids. We had been told it was the nicest place to take a family in town. The whole place was super dark and dingy. We were seated at a booth toward the back, near the kitchen which we could look into. The table was dirty. The seats were dirty. The floor was grimy with crumbs of food all over. The kitchen, from our view, was just as bad. Then we received menus and the prices were outrageously high. I was grossed out and cheap. So we got up and quietly left. In Corpus Christ TX. I wish I could remember the name of the burger joint. We waited for approx 45 minutes after we placed our order. We took off and went to eat somewhere else. Was it busy? Absolutely not. My shift was over. No, it wasn't. Waitress told me she was on break when I asked for the check. I didn't want to wait for her, so I left. Done that twice in my 59 years old life. Both times waited more than 30 minutes for the check after asking for it. If they don't want my money, I'm happy to keep it. I greatly prefer the system here in Japan. Either the restaurants are small enough that you're always visible to a server or manager, or you get a buzzer at your table that summons someone almost immediately. When it's time to pay, you push the buzzer. Someone comes. You ask for the bill. They return with it a minute or two later, and then you go to the manned register by the door and pay. If you feel like you've been waiting a while, you just push it again and someone will come to see what you need. But that's rarely necessary. Some small places, Usually ones where you go and eat a quick meal like ramen or a beef rice bowl. Have what resemble vending machines. Each button is labeled with a menu item and price. You enter, push the item you want, pay, retrieve a receipt that prints out and hand it to the staff at the counter. They then prepare and serve whatever dish corresponds to the number on the receipt. Doesn't take long either. Few minutes tops. Japanese servers don't even get tips. Yet the service is that good. Benefits of a society that beats it into every child that performing one's responsibilities is the meaning of life. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.